I have been with my fiance for almost 14 years. We have two kids aged 6 and almost 8. For the most part, we have a nice life, living on acreage with our two cats and dogs. Yesterday, we went out for my mother-in-law's birthday lunch with his whole family. It was nice for the most part until my fiance started drinking. He rarely drinks anymore, but when he does, he goes overboard and has no self-control. Quite frankly, I started to feel embarrassed about his behavior. He started complaining about the food, was rude to the waitstaff, and was just generally behaving like a child, ruining an otherwise nice get-together. We left the lunch and went to a nearby pub where he continued to drink. By the time we left, he was really drunk, so I drove us all home. My daughter was quite upset and crying in the car because she wanted to stay the night with my mother-in-law, but we hadn't packed anything for her, so she had to come home. That's when it all went downhill. My fiancé started angrily yelling, "Shut up," at her multiple times in a row. It was awful, and I could tell she felt scared. I then had a go at him, but at this point, nothing I said would have made a difference given how drunk he was. My heart was broken at how he spoke to her. Then he started on me and wouldn't stop until we got home. It was an hour drive home. He said awful things, like he kept repeating that I was nothing when I met him, that he saved me, that I needed to remember where I came from, that it's because of him that we are where we are today. He said that I was lazy and didn't contribute anything. He told me that I should move out and live with my parents, that I came with nothing, so now I should leave with nothing. He called me a leech and said that I don't provide any support to him, emotional or physical. Like, what the heck? It just went on and on. All while the kids were in the back. I was trying to keep it together and couldn't even escape anywhere because we were in the car. A bit of backstory. When we met, I had a $10,000 credit card debt because I was young and dumb and a little more financially irresponsible. But I was living away from home, fully supporting myself with a full-time job in human resources. He bought his first home around the time we met, and I was there from the very beginning. Contributing equally to the house and all expenses, he provided the deposit for the house. When we had kids, he wanted to leave his job and start his own business, so we sold the house and moved in with his mom, and I stayed home for 2.5 years with them while he pursued his dreams. I have worked 4 days a week now for about 4 years and do all the kids' stuff: drop-offs, pickups, lunches, events, cooking, cleaning, and washing. He takes care of all the outside stuff, but during the week, it's all on me. He literally comes home from work and sits on the couch in front of the television until bedtime while I cook, clean up, and put the kids to bed, etc. He has a lot of unresolved anger issues and possibly other things going on. He's always had poor emotional regulation. I've had to put up with it for years now, and I think I've desensitized myself. I don't even know what a normal relationship should be. Maybe I've reached my limit. I also grew up in an emotionally hurtful household, so maybe this is my normal. I get no emotional support from him, and then he expects me to be physically intimate. He gets upset when I don't want to. He becomes defensive when I try and speak up about his behavior and how it makes me feel. It's his way or no way. I'm not saying I'm perfect by any stretch, but I believe I am a good person who loves my family and wants to live a drama-free, simple life. I slept on the couch last night. I haven't stopped crying. I feel heartbroken, worthless, like I'm nothing. This isn't the first time he has said these things. I don't know what I'm supposed to do or what to even say. I feel like I want to leave, but I have no idea where I'd go or how I'd even start the process. We live far from family and friends. Any and all advice would be appreciated. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Okay, a normal relationship involves people holding each other up, laughing together, showing affection, providing support, and making home a safe space for each other and the children. There may be bickering about housework, but that is generally outweighed by the good things. Why are you still with this man? He is hurting you and hurting your children. It won't get better. You need an exit strategy for yourself and the children. It won't be as bad as you think. Comment 2. You're a lot nicer than I am, because I would have kicked him out of the car and let him figure out how to get home on his own. Tell him that treatment for his alcoholism is mandatory if he ever wants to be around you and the kids again. Children should never feel unsafe in their parents' presence. That would have been the deal breaker of a lifetime for me. Now, for the update. It's been about 3 weeks since the whole mess with my fiance at my mother-in-law's birthday. So after a long and exhausting talk, I told him I couldn't believe he acted like that in front of our kids. He apologized, but then started blaming everything else, like work stress and the kids and whatever else he could think of. I was right though, because I noticed he had been drinking more and more. Not just casually either, like he was hiding bottles of liquor around the house and then sneaking drinks when he thought I wasn't looking. He didn't think I noticed him coming home smelling like a brewery and acting like he was sober. The kids, especially our daughter, have been really off. She started having nightmares and was too scared to sleep alone, which broke my heart. It just reminded me of when I was a kid and my dad would come home late and drunk. I felt so alone and overwhelmed, so I decided to reach out to my sister. She's the only one who really gets me. She suggested we have a family gathering at our parents' house for the upcoming holiday. I agreed, thinking it might help ease some of the stress. My fiance didn't seem thrilled about it. In fact, he reluctantly agreed to attend, but then made a snarky comment about it being a waste of time. We got through the week, and I thought things might be getting back to normal. Then came the day of the holiday dinner. I noticed he had been drinking again before we even got there, like a lot. It made me feel embarrassed and on edge. During dinner, he made a rude comment about my cooking in front of everyone, and my brother thought it was hilarious, which just made it worse. I tried to brush it off, but the comments just kept getting worse and worse. At one point, he yelled at the kids to be quiet, and I'll never forget the silence that followed. It felt like everything just stopped. I excused myself to the kitchen to cool off because I was about to explode. While I was in the kitchen, I overheard my sister talking to my mom about my fiance's behavior. They were both really concerned that it was becoming a regular thing, especially for the kids. It made me really sad to hear them talk like that, but I couldn't blame them. I decided to bring the kids to the living room to distract them from everything. After dinner, my brother suggested a game to lighten the mood, but my fiancé refused to participate. He just sat there sulking and making snide remarks about the game, which really annoyed me. At one point, my sister confronted him about his attitude, and wow, she really called him out. He went off, saying everyone was against him, which shocked everyone. I was so embarrassed. After that, my brother pulled me aside to express his concern about the kids. I knew they noticed it too, and I just felt like I was drowning. I decided I couldn't just sit back and let him walk all over me, so I told him we needed to talk privately. We stepped outside, and I just laid it all out. I told him his drinking and behavior were unacceptable. He got all defensive and insisted it was just a phase and that he was fine. I stood my ground and told him that it wasn't just fine and that things needed to change. He got really angry and stormed off, saying he needed space. Then he just drove away without telling anyone where he was going. The next day, he came back home and claimed he had thought things over. He acted like everything was normal, trying to engage in our usual family routine, but I could tell the tension was still there. I decided to plan a weekend trip to a nearby lake with the kids, hoping for a little break from all this. I told my fiancé he was welcome to join us, but he said he had work and chose to stay behind. When we got back home, I found a message from my mother-in-law on my phone. She expressed her concern about my fiancé's behavior and suggested counseling. He saw the message, and wow, he did not take it well. He got really angry and said she was overreacting, then threatened to leave. I stood my ground and told him I wouldn't tolerate his behavior any longer. He just kept yelling, and the argument escalated, but in the end, he left the house for the night. The next morning, I found a note from him saying he needed to think about things. That was 3 days ago. I decided to contact a local counselor for advice on how to move forward. I just need to figure out what to do next. Edit. I spoke with the counselor, who really helped me see things clearly. She suggested I think about my future and what I want for me and the kids. I hadn't done that before. There's been no word from him, and the kids are doing better, but they're still adjusting to everything. Am I the idiot for calling out my mother's toxic messages and sparking a family showdown on Thanksgiving? I usually see my mom every weekend, but skipped this week. I told her it was because I've been feeling down after the election and needed some time. Honestly, I would just struggle hanging out with her because she's a classic baby boomer, Facebook Trump voter. She never talks about it in real life because it usually gets a negative response. I was feeling proud of myself for setting a normal, respectful boundary. Since then, she texted me at 8 a.m. yesterday that she was trying to flip a mattress by herself, got it halfway, and said my wife and I had to come help her finish because otherwise she'd get hurt. I avoided responding until her neighbors helped instead. I got sent a Facebook meme about how she's worried whether I'm surrounding myself with people who are good for me. Whenever I'm upset, she immediately suspects it's my wife's fault. I just got emailed a long statement about how Bob Marley said they're just trying to divide us with hate. It states more than implies that me being upset about the election is just liberal brainwashing, and if I'm mad at anyone about how they voted, they are winning. I'd think it was an insane copy-paste chain email, but it's full of her favorite issues and emojis, so unfortunately, I think she wrote it personally. It includes gems like mass formation psychosis, and this is a recipe for Rwanda too, and the goal is to cause me anxiety and create a solidarity of the collective. I try so hard to not talk about this stuff with her. I love her, and she's had a hard time with making friends or having hobbies since my parents' divorce a few years ago. Honestly, I just made the mistake of being too honest about how not well I'm doing post-election. It took me a couple of days to get out of bed. I implied as much because I wanted to justify not seeing her for a single weekend. Seems like my options are: 1, ignore it and pretend it never happened the next time we hang out. Most harmonious option. High chance of this recurring, though. 2, some kind of angry reply about how it must be nice knowing the coming changes won't affect her. This will only make the "you've been brainwashed by liberals to hate me" conversation worse, of course. 3, try to patiently explain why the things she's sending are a hurtful response to my attempts to set boundaries. She's always talking about healthy boundaries. I will try not to be pessimistic about whether this could possibly help anything. This just sucks. It's hurtful to me, it's hurtful to my wife, and it's a much worse reaction than I was expecting, considering how non-confrontational she normally is. I would appreciate perspective on how to handle this. It feels like anything I do will make it worse. To add, replies seem to be either cut her off or can't believe you'd cut her off over this. This is really more about how "don't feel good this weekend, see you next time" turned into increasingly intense messages about me being brainwashed. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I'm sorry, this sounds really painful. I do not understand why they want to gloat so badly. Here's a possible script. Mom, to keep the peace, I do not want to talk about politics with you for a while. I hope you can understand that I am disappointed, not brainwashed. Please respect this boundary, or I will stop talking and emailing with you altogether. Good luck. Comment 2. If I were you, I would limit contact with her for a while. I honestly think that anyone who voted for Trump has either a mental health issue, is incredibly ignorant, or is so greedy that they think he will just help them get more money. The man is not normal, and anyone who votes for him is not normal. Now, for the update. A few days after my mom sent that last message, my sister Sarah called me up. She was all like, "We need to talk about Mom." Apparently, Mom had been complaining to Sarah about my so-called disrespect. I mean, what? I don't even know what that means. This was all so random, but I guess Sarah and her husband were planning to take me out for dinner on Saturday. Italian food, my fave. You can't really go wrong with pasta, right? So there I was, trying to enjoy my gnocchi, but Sarah kept bringing up the politics crap. I tried to change the subject, but she insisted on talking about it. She was all like, "Mom is really hurt that you think differently than her." I mean, it's not like I changed my views overnight. I've been where I am for a long time now. Then she dropped this bomb. Mom thinks my wife is the reason I feel the way I do. She thinks I've been influenced by my more liberal wife. Like, what does that even mean? I just said, Sarah, my wife is supportive of my feelings, but she's not the reason for my views. I thought I made it pretty clear, but Sarah just shrugged it off and was like, Mom's just worried about you. I was so frustrated. I wanted to tell her to mind her own business, but I didn't want to ruin dinner. So I just bit my tongue, paid the bill, and went home. A few days later, I got another meme from my mom on Facebook. This one was about toxic relationships. That was it. I had enough. I finally sent her a message saying I needed space. I figured that would be the end of it. But she replied almost immediately, saying I was ungrateful. So here we were, just days away from Thanksgiving, and I was dreading the family gatherings. I had an idea. I thought maybe if I hosted Thanksgiving at my house, it would help ease the tension. I sent out invites to the family, including my mom, even though I wasn't sure she'd come. I just wanted to keep the peace. A few days before Thanksgiving, I found out from Sarah that my mom was planning to stay at a hotel nearby. She mentioned it so casually during a phone call, like it was no big deal. I texted my mom about it, and she claimed she needed distance from the negativity. What negativity? It's all in her head. On Thanksgiving Day, I prepared a big feast, hoping things would change. Everyone started arriving, including Sarah and her husband. But just when I thought we could enjoy the day, I got a text from my mom saying she was too tired to come. So here we were, trying to have a nice Thanksgiving. We decided to finally address the situation during dinner. When everyone was seated, I raised a toast and mentioned my mom's absence. The atmosphere just shifted. People started whispering about it. Then my brother Jake finally spoke up, asking why there was so much tension. I just wanted to get it all out there, so I decided to take matters into my own hands. I sent a group text to the family, outlining all the hurtful messages my mom had been sending me. I know some people think it was a bad idea, but I was done with the secrecy and the whispers behind my back. This was my family too, and I deserved to be heard. That group text caused such an uproar in the family chat. Everyone was responding, and my dad even chimed in, expressing his disappointment in my mom's behavior. Then my mom finally responded, furious that I called her out publicly. She was the one sending me all those awful messages, and she had the nerve to be mad at me? The family ultimately decided to confront my mom together at the hotel. We planned a family meeting at the hotel to resolve all the issues once and for all. I was kind of nervous about it, but I felt like it was the only way to move forward. To answer a few questions, my sister Sarah knew about Mom's behavior, but didn't share all the details until the dinner. Am I the idiot for wanting to escape my husband's toxic control and find my own happiness? My husband has this rule that I'm not allowed to critique his driving, and for the most part, I respect that. But yesterday, he sped up to 100 miles per hour to pass another car, and I reflexively said, "Oh gosh." He got really upset, saying I'd agreed not to comment on his driving, that if it is about his driving, he doesn't want to hear any sounds or reactions from me at all. And if I want to make sounds or comments, I can just drive myself. I tried to explain that it wasn't a critique, just a reaction to the sudden speed, but he didn't want to talk to me for the rest of the ride. When we got home, we had things to carry inside, and he only took his own bag, leaving everything else for me. As I was struggling, one of my things fell, and he just watched. When I asked for help, he said, "No one told you we had to take everything in one trip." I ended up struggling up to the apartment, and even had to go back down alone for the rest while he stayed upstairs. When I got back, he completely ignored me, and I started crying. I tried to calm down and asked if we could talk, but he said he wouldn't engage with me. Even as I was crying and begging him to talk, he told me he didn't care and that he was not going to comfort me, and went back to playing his game. This kind of behavior happens often. But this time, it got so bad that I had to leave the house because I was feeling really depressed and on edge. I packed a bag, told him I was done, and left to stay at a hotel. He didn't even acknowledge me leaving and only called 6 hours later to check on me. I came back the next day, and we finally talked. He told me I don't listen to him and that I caused myself to be hurt. He admitted he could have handled some things differently, like showing that my leaving mattered to him. But he still insisted that I was to blame and said no one forced me to take all the bags. I reminded him that in our relationship, we've always helped each other with things like that. I even asked him multiple times if he was upset, and he said no, only to blame me the next day. I'm honestly confused and don't understand. He also said that he sees crying as something that needs to happen for something big, and he thinks I cry too much, and he doesn't always register that I'm hurt. Even though I verbally say it and ask him to show that he cares about me, what does a supportive partner look like in this situation? Now for an update. For anyone who comes back to this, we went to therapy. He agreed that he overreacted and that it was controlling. He will work to not limit my reactions and understands that he should have prioritized me in the moment that I was crying. A boundary was set by me that if this happens again, I will be done with the relationship and I will not return. We will see what happens. Either way, it will be positive. If I leave, it's because I was not given a choice and decided to prioritize myself. And if I stay, it will be because he stayed true to his promise. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I know this term gets wildly overused, but he sounds like a textbook narcissist. Playing games by engaging in dangerous, frightening behavior and placing rules on you about how you react to that behavior, anyone would react in that situation. And stonewalling you aren't the behaviors of a kind, healthy, or well-adjusted person. The same goes for placing blame on you. He absolutely wanted to frighten you to make you break his unreasonable rule. He 100% set you up to fail. Would he have had all of these rules for the police if he were pulled over for speeding? Are the authorities allowed to criticize his reckless driving? Surely it is illegal in your country to drive so fast just to overtake another car. He sounds like he gets off on hurting you, honestly. Comment 2. Your husband is an emotionally hurtful, overly controlling, gaslighting individual. This was not your fault. It was his fault for driving recklessly and scaring you. And oh gosh is not criticism and is not a reason for him to be passive-aggressive by refusing to help you carry things up the stairs and giving you the silent treatment. What is he? A fragile, delicate snowflake that can't handle you saying, oh gosh. I used to work with a woman whose husband was like this. He drove recklessly and ended up rolling their car over into a ditch and nearly ended the life of her. She had to divorce him for her own safety. I suggest you do the same before something like this happens to you. Now, for the update, a few weeks have passed since that therapy session where my husband admitted he's been controlling. We've been trying to talk more, but honestly, old habits are super hard to change. He still dodges any talk about our relationship issues. Whenever I bring something up, he just switches the topic to sports. Not even kidding. It's like I'm talking to a brick wall that's all about ESPN. I've been trying to find some personal fulfillment, so I started going to this weekly book club. It's been awesome to have something just for me, you know? I get to read, meet new people, and talk about stuff that doesn't involve my husband dodging my questions. During one of the meetings, I met this new member, Sarah. We clicked right away. She's into a lot of the same stuff I am, and we spend hours talking about everything from books to our life's challenges. It feels so good to connect with someone who gets it. A couple of weeks ago, Sarah invited me to this local art exhibition that was happening the next weekend. I was so excited. I mentioned the invitation to my husband during dinner, thinking he'd be supportive and maybe even want to join me. Nope. Instead, he scoffed at the idea, saying he didn't see the point in going to an art show. Not everyone is as cultured as you, I guess. So the day of the exhibition arrived, and I went alone. Honestly, I had a blast. It felt so freeing to enjoy the art and atmosphere by myself, without worrying about what he thought or how he'd ruin my fun. While I was there, I ran into Tom, a mutual acquaintance from my book club. We started talking about our favorite artists and stuff. Then after the exhibition, he suggested grabbing coffee, and I was like, sure, why not? Meanwhile, back home, my husband noticed my phone buzzing with messages from Sarah and Tom. He confronted me about it later, accusing me of being secretive and untrustworthy. Can you believe that? It's like he forgot who the real secretive one is. Later that week, we had a family dinner with my parents and siblings. During dinner, my dad brought up my recent therapy session, jokingly asking how things were going. My husband just laughed it off. Then, my younger sister asked if we were still fighting. Instead of answering, my husband made this dumb joke about her needing a therapist for her art obsession. Like, seriously? After dinner, he insisted on leaving early, saying he had a headache. We got home, and he went straight to the bedroom without saying a word. I tried to talk to him, but of course, he ignored me and got lost in his game. I swear, I could set off a fire alarm, and he'd be like, "Did you hear that in-game noise?" The next day, I found a message from Sarah inviting me to a weekend getaway with friends. I was so tempted to say no, but when I brought it up to my husband, he just exploded. He accused me of abandoning him and demanded to know if I was going to leave him for someone else. The argument escalated, and he stormed out of the house, saying he needed time alone. A few days later, he returned home and acted like nothing had happened. I mean, really? Like I didn't just have the biggest freak out of my life? I decided to keep my plans with Sarah because I needed this. The weekend came, and honestly, I had a good time away from home. I needed it so much. When I got back, my husband asked if I had fun, but his tone felt off. It was like all the excitement in his voice was sucked out by a vacuum cleaner. And here we are, stuck in this cycle of avoidance and confrontation. He pretends like nothing's wrong, and I pretend like we're not on the brink of destruction. It's so exhausting. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.